Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this in the world. I hope you guys are doing okay. So the final numbers for EVO have finally been revealed, and it's got the FGC talking quite a bit. Firstly, the Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8 numbers are great. You would be lying if you said you weren't impressed with those numbers. So shoutouts to both those communities for showing up for their game. Street Fighter and Tekken have been steadily increasing their communities over time, so it's really nice to see that these are some of the largest numbers that we've seen for them at EVO. Also, a round of applause for Third Strike. A game that came out in the 90s has over 1,000 entrants. That's insane to me. Some of you weren't even born when this game was out, and I was about 7 years old when Third Strike came out, so that's incredible and just goes to show you how timeless Third Strike really is. KOF has unfortunately come in dead last, which kind of sucks because I actually like KOF. I hope the franchise can turn things around and start sitting closer to the head of the table, because even though everyone says that there are a big three, it really only feels like the big two right now. Mortal Kombat is not far off KOF for last place, and for a game with a much bigger budget than KOF and a bigger audience apparently, that is really surprising. At least you'd like to think it's surprising, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But obviously this has really got the FGC talking. There's a lot of conversation on Twitter right now with regards to Mortal Kombat and what's happened with its numbers, and I wanted to cover it today and give my thoughts on all of this. Now, before I start, let me just say this, that if you are an MK player and you're watching this and you're going to EVO, or you're just going to be spectating, please don't let my video or anybody else's rhetoric about Mortal Kombat suck the fun out of it for you. Go there with your friends, have a good time, have good games, create some memories. This video is literally just to explore why MK is having another rough time at EVO, and I say another rough time because this is not the first time. So Hungrybox tweeted out saying, "Real talk, can someone who's actually from the Mortal Kombat community explain the Mortal Kombat 1 situation? Half the QRTs on the chair throw yesterday were people shitting on the game, and now these entrant numbers. Is it that bad? Does the community reject the game?" And the short answer is yes. The proof is in the pudding, unfortunately. The community has rejected this game, but this is not a new thing. The Mortal Kombat community have been known to reject a lot of the titles NRS have been putting out, barring MK9 and MKX obviously, and even then, there may be a conversation to be had on the rejection of those games as well. And so yes, MK1 is that bad. When your patches need patches to fix patches that broke the game further instead of just patching it like intended, yes, the game is in a bad state. It's been in a bad state since it came out. The tournament side of this really exposes that and exposes how the Mortal Kombat community feel about this game. But of course there are those that will always lean on the overall sales of Mortal Kombat, and we're going to get to that in a little bit as well. So you have an individual here called Saki. I believe that they are a commentator for Mortal Kombat, so they're giving their take, and they've said it's actually not a community rejection problem. First, EVO is not a major stop for a pro competition spot, at least not at this time. Most of the community is online, and the ones looking to compete consistently and professionally are only a small percentage of the community. Numbers are more consistent online versus offline because most of the community doesn't travel. Also, EVO being one of the more expensive tournaments, a lot of us go to Combo Breaker, which has been said to be the heart of the scene since most of the development community is in Chicago. MK is also a game where people go super hard, even casuals, in the first few months before going back to that small percentage of the community looking to go full pro. Technically speaking, we're actually up in numbers because last year for MK11 there were 451 entrants, and this was a game that survived during the pandemic. Happy to give more insight, but hope this helped. The pro competition, in my opinion, is a very weak argument. When people truly have love for a game, they will show up. When a community feels like it's being heard by its community managers or developers of the games they're sinking hours into, they will show up. And even then, you don't necessarily need communication with the development team to ride for a game. Look at Super Smash Bros. Melee. Nintendo was basically hands off with that game, and even made efforts to destroy the scene and the Smash community, and despite all of that, the Smash community continued to ride for that game with no investments from Nintendo, no proper payouts for a lot of players in a lot of these tournaments, and no real coverage outside of what they were doing themselves. Say what you want about the Smash community, and we've said a lot about them, but they loved Melee and they really showed up for that game. Even here in the UK, the Tekken scene is alive and well, and people are showing up to tournaments both online and offline with little next to no prizes. And that's purely because they love the game, because the game is fun to play. It's also fun to watch. Now that's not to say it doesn't have problems, but again, the proof is there. People aren't leaving their houses for something they think is rubbish or not worth their time. Combo Breaker is always the tournament that is used as an excuse for where the attention is in the MK community, but the entrants for Combo Breaker were very low as well, sitting at about 274, whereas Street Fighter enjoyed 1,432 entrants and Tekken came in with 1,633. I bring both of these up because they say these are the big three, but I think these numbers, as well as other tournament numbers, challenge that idea. Now I know this person is trying to be positive about things and I understand why, but if we're being realistic, MK being up in numbers doesn't say much when the numbers have more often than not always been down. There is a lot of negative press around Mortal Kombat 1, there's been a lot of negative press around this game since day one. I don't think it's ever really going to end, and that has been from both members of the community, former members of the community, and surrounding members of the FGC, and that has been since the game came out. So another individual called Tipo says, that makes sense, but also what are your thoughts around the negative sentiment towards Mortal Kombat 1? Do you think it's just people riding the hate train, or it's just misrepresentation of the community's thoughts, or maybe something else? Saki responds with, truthfully, it's a mixture of everything you mentioned. Outside, people look down on the NRS community, and we've not the perfect community, far from it, but a lot of it is online. Offline, we're truly the most chill, friendly and supportive, even silly despite the chair. Our passion brings sometimes the worst in us. We want so much from our games, but sometimes we get so little, and while that's a whole other topic and convo, our frustrated comments get seen. I think the best way to explain to people how NRS fans are is like how Heat fans are when they watch the Heat play basketball. We like the game, the players, the vibes, but we're terrible fans in the sense we don't always show positive support like other games do. I don't actually think Mortal Kombat fans are terrible fans. I think they're just sick and tired of getting hung out to dry. You want a lot from your games because your more recent iterations have left much to be desired. If I paid top dollar for a game, I at least want it to function correctly. At the very least, I want it to be in an operational state when I purchase it. That's not what you get when you buy NRS games. Most notably Mortal Kombat 1. It's constantly doing something wrong, constantly glitching. It's almost like they don't test things before they come out. You're not terrible fans for not supporting the game. NRS are terrible developers for not supporting you. You line their pockets at the end of the day. If nobody buys the game, then nobody at NRS is making games and WB will drop them. DB Hillard says, I've theorized to it being a regional issue. Isn't MK banned in Japan, where a lot of fighters go to flourish? I hear this talking point all the time. It is not a regional issue. This is something that people have constantly fallen back on. Let's actually look at the numbers for Mortal Kombat historically. Mortal Kombat 9 had reported to sell over 4 million copies by January 2013, and yet its EVO numbers only reflected 233 entrants. The year before, it had a slightly better showing with 304, but slightly better is not impressive by any stretch of the imagination considering that metric. Then we have Mortal Kombat 10, which as of March 2019 has sold 12 million copies, which is a number that eclipses Tekken and Street Fighter in a lot of cases, and yet Mortal Kombat 10 peaked at 1,162 entrants in 2015 and then saw a decline in 2016 with 707. Now whilst these are much better numbers than Mortal Kombat 9, it's still pretty pathetic considering how well the game sells. Then you get to Mortal Kombat 11, which as of October 2022 sold 15 million copies, an insane number. And in MK11's defense, despite it being one of the most hated games of the modern MK era, it holds the most MK entrants ever at EVO with 1,567. Now obviously, this rapidly decreased in the following years, unlike Street Fighter and Tekken, which have continued to flourish, but this was MK's peak with regards to the competitive scene. Even then, with 15 million sales and MK being in its homeland of the USA, you'd think more people would show up for it, but they don't. If a game sells that much and is on homegrown land and is a homegrown fighting game, why are people always speaking about other regions? Do we say this for Korea and StarCraft, or even Pakistan and Tekken? Pakistan is actually a very good example. They're a perfect example of a community showing up for a game just because they love the game. Nobody knew how good Pakistani players were. Nobody knew how good the Pakistani region was. Nobody was sponsoring these guys. They did that off their own back and got recognized because they loved the game. It has nothing to do with it being banned in parts of Asia, because America is a big enough place and Mortal Kombat sells well enough. EVO is done in Las Vegas, right? It should not need Japan or China or Korea to flourish. And even if it got unbanned in Japan, I doubt it will do particularly well there. Their style of fighting games are totally different to the clunky style of Mortal Kombat, and I'm willing to bet it probably wouldn't sell very well. But this is a massive assumption that people make and something people like to lean on. It doesn't make sense. If Mortal Kombat 1 goes on to sell 20 million copies, can you still say, well, if we had Japan, we'd do better at EVO? EVO's not even in Japan this time. We're in Vegas. It should not need Japan to do well. Molly B says, let me head this off right now. NRS EVO registrations. This is Mortal Kombat 1's first EVO but second season of the game, meaning it'd be comparable to the second years of other games where it's close to MKX and better than Injustice 2 or MK11. So if we could avoid the dooming, that'd be great. And then she's posted the numbers there. There's no doom dooming here. There's no dooming to be had. For Mortal Kombat standards, it isn't the worst thing that we've seen, she's right. But that's not saying much because the bar is already incredibly low with Mortal Kombat. Once again, it isn't that NRS games are falling off or attracting less competitors than the norm, it's that the competitive communities for other games have grown a lot, which is a good thing. The number of Mortal Kombat 1 entrants means we'll have a hype and stacked tournament, so let's enjoy it. I think people should go and enjoy it. It's not like you can't have a good time with 600 people that share a common interest. But if we're being honest about the situation here, it's that other scenes are growing because the people in charge in those scenes have shown a lot of love and care to the communities, and even if we don't like all of their decisions and don't necessarily like every single thing in the games, and they're far from perfect, they are still a lot of fun to play. For as much as some of us may have been getting onto Tekken earlier this year, we all went back and kept playing it. A lot of us are former Mortal Kombat 1 players here, and a lot of us never went back to Mortal Kombat 1 because we meant what we said. It wasn't just for shits and giggles. When people said that game was shit, they meant it. Now, Mortal Kombat never fell off, as she's insinuating here. Mortal Kombat never fell off because it never got on to begin with. Mortal Kombat 9 is widely considered within the community, not the casuals, within the community, to be a return to form for Mortal Kombat following Armageddon. Until this day, it is still regarded as one of the best and most iconic games in the franchise, and even then, it could barely muster 300 entrants at its peak. Mortal Kombat 10 is also looked at with fondness in the community, again, not with casuals, although I know a lot of casuals that love Mortal Kombat 10. But within the community, they look at it fondly, and that could only muster just over 1,000 entrants at its peak, which is what Third Strike is doing today, despite Third Strike being 25 years old. These are numbers driven by a community that cannot be bothered to play their own game. Street Fighter and Tekken did grow, so why didn't MK? And well, it's because Mortal Kombat, in my opinion, was never intended to be a serious competitive fighting game, and I think everybody can see that, and that's why people are not showing up. I think it's certainly dabbled in that sector before and had minor to relatively decent success, but you can tell they're not intended to be tournament fighting games in their design. Firstly, if we look at how NRS has treated the game itself, not the community, but the game itself, you can see that tournaments aren't a priority for them. Constantly releasing unrefined updates and balance patches that make no sense. They just move the problem from one character to another, and they don't address the glaring issues in the game with the time and care that they need, or they take very long to respond. Not to mention, the community have continuously pointed out how Johnny Cage and Peacemaker need real adjustments, and whilst updates have been applied to the game and to those two characters, they seem barely thought out and just a quick response to shut people up and close down some of that online noise. Why make the two characters the casual offline players seem to love weaker to appease a smaller vocal base online, essentially? If you cared about the pro scene, then you wouldn't accidentally revert Cyrax back to his nightmarish state, not address it in the patch notes, and then let everyone know that even though the finals of your big pro competition, the biggest pro competition for this game, is round the corner, Cyrax can stay the same. You guys will just have to hold that. If that happened in Tekken or Street Fighter, it would be an absolute shitstorm. That could never fly. But the Mortal Kombat community let it fly because they know they have no real power with the devs. They're not a driving force for the game. You are not required for this game to do well. Cave Mode says it still looks bad, almost dead last. Molly B replies saying no, it doesn't look bad except to people who are foolishly talking without understanding anything about the history of NRS games competitively. Amorphous says also it needs to be said some popular regions literally cannot buy Mortal Kombat 1 legally at all, like Japan, South Korea and China. Molly B replies saying yep, very important. People are not foolishly talking without understanding NRS games competitive history, and if they are, then they're doing it a favor because knowing this game's history with tournaments makes it even worse. Never actually getting on the party bus is worse than falling off it. The fact that this is a running theme and joke now is actually a problem for competitive Mortal Kombat. It would be one thing for other scenes to clown the most financially successful fighting game, but it's an entirely different thing when its own scene clowns it and don't show up for it. Make no mistake people, you are not wrong when you say that Mortal Kombat looks really bad right now. You're not wrong now, and you weren't wrong last year or the year before, because ever since Mortal Kombat has been involved in the competitive scene, it has looked bad, and once again, Asian markets will not help this game. America is big enough without Asia, and Mortal Kombat sells well enough without Asia. EVO is not being done in Asia, it's being done in America. There are no excuses for this. ridiculous. Curious Joy says, I mean this in a way to not offend anyone, but as amazing as NRS games are, I feel they will always be bigger in a casual eye than a competitive eye. As strong as the NRS community is, many people move to more revenue possibilities, i.e. 1 million prize pool. This is also another factor. Yes, people aren't showing up because there's a lack of love for the game, but it's not like NRS are incentivizing people to show up either. But why would they at the same time? When Mortal Kombat can be hated this hard by its core fan base and still sell stupidly well against casuals, why would they pour money into the scene? There's no need. It's not like Tekken and Street Fighter where the core market really matters. Imagine having a good financial year when everyone hates you. It's crazy. That should really show everyone how irrelevant the competitive scene is to NRS, and I don't mean it as a slight to any of you. It's just facts, and it's not me just saying that to be spiteful. You guys aren't even showing up to play the game yourselves. So yeah, if they haven't provided you with a good base product, there's no money in it, and there's alternatives that offer bigger payouts, why wouldn't they go there? There's also a clear and bigger emphasis on looking after the community in the other fighting games. Whilst there are definitely blunders and things people are not happy about, myself included, I'd be lying if I said Capcom and Namco don't care about their core scenes. They very clearly do. I'm sure the Mortal Kombat community would love to be able to communicate with someone over there the way we get to communicate with Harada and the team. I'm sure the Mortal Kombat community would love for a DLC character to be released without breaking the game and introducing new bugs.
Make me cry, baby!
Final round. Fight.
Finish it!
We just had M. Bison drop on Street Fighter 6, and I haven't heard a peep about a new glitch or a bug. Now maybe there are a few out there, but not widespread the way Mortal Kombat is. Curious Joy then says, yeah, people call things dead when looking at Twitch viewer numbers, but a lot of people who play don't stream games. Now that is very true. A lot of people that play games don't actually stream them. However, within the streaming community on both Twitch and YouTube, Mortal Kombat numbers look very bleak and dire. However, we can get an idea for how many people are playing it and how well it's retaining its players on Steam. Now, I was going to do this for PlayStation and Xbox, but the numbers are very hazy. But even on the websites where the numbers are hazy, they still don't look good for Mortal Kombat, so just bear that in mind. Even though I'm not showing console numbers here and I'm showing Steam numbers, if you go and look up the numbers for the console games, which I haven't put on the screen because they're not accurate, they are still not good for Mortal Kombat. But if you look here on the Steam charts, I took these screenshots about an hour ago. You can see 1,052 people played the game about an hour ago. Then if you go over to Mortal Kombat 11, 2,598. Guys, go and look this up yourself. I checked this about an hour ago. Why are there more people playing Mortal Kombat 11 than Mortal Kombat 1? Then you look at Tekken 8. Now Tekken 8's numbers have definitely dwindled, but 5,229 is a good, respectable number for a fighting game that's been out for some time now. Just for reference, if you look at Tekken 7, only 744 people are playing this game. So clearly Tekken 8 is the dominant one. There's no signs of Tekken 7 coming back to take over. People have moved on. If you go over to Street Fighter, Street Fighter is absolutely killing it right now on Steam. 18,323, and I didn't even bother checking Street Fighter 5 because nobody liked that game. There's no way it's going to have more than a couple hundred maximum playing it over Street Fighter 6. Now as I said, there are websites that count console players, but they've been proven to be widely inaccurate. But even if you went to take a look at them, you'll find that Mortal Kombat 1 is being totally eclipsed. How is it that Mortal Kombat 11 has more active players on Steam than MK1? Wasn't MK11 hated by almost everyone? Again, this isn't other scenes taking a dump on Mortal Kombat 1. It's the Mortal Kombat scene rejecting the game itself. The proof is in the numbers. Everywhere you turn, the numbers tell the same story. GS Trap Hustler says, thank you, people just be talking without looking at actual numbers. Molly B says, exactly. I wish the numbers were higher and that MK was growing the way these other games are too, but people acting like this is a drop off are just wrong. And then Python says, considering that this is the first EVO for Mortal Kombat 1, it is a drop off. Year 1 for X and 11 were about double the numbers. This game has just had too many issues out the gate. The problem is people are talking, acknowledging the bad numbers, and then people are denying it or pretending like this is okay because it's always been like this. Yeah, it mostly has, and it always has been bad. This has always been a bad thing. Again, it was never really a drop off because Mortal Kombat never really got on to begin with. It has been terrible out of the gate. To be fair, the FGC is also growing, period. SF4 in 2015 had 2.2 thousand registrations. Street Fighter 5 in 2016 just broke 5k. SF6 now is ahead of that. Tekken 7 had 1k reg in 2017 to over 4k now with T8. So while MK isn't necessarily falling off, it's at best stagnating in offline events. This is definitely true and a fair criticism. It's very important to point out how the other two members of the big three have been continuously growing despite bumps in the road, and the third member of the big three is being outperformed by Under Night in Birth. And that's not even a slight on Under Night, but that game has a fraction of the budget behind it, a mere fraction. And then you have people here ripping into it saying that it's fallen off, that they need to do something. People are clowning on the numbers, breaking down how embarrassing it is for Mortal Kombat to be in this state, and even Sikander going point by point here on what the problems are with Mortal Kombat, and there is just not enough time in the day to go over the issues with this game. Then you have a tweet here from Diff. I'm going to read out this tweet. This is the last tweet I'm going to read out, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts on everything. Mortal Kombat will always be the king of online play. Offline entries have mostly been low, to be honest. MK1 has no player base in Japan and South Korea because it's banned, which does hurt its playability for some. The ban in those countries leads to lower viewer counts on Twitch too. Mortal Kombat is not the king of online play, especially considering it barely functioned for a time online and crossplay was never prioritized, and even when crossplay was prioritized, it took them forever to do it properly. The king of online play right now is Street Fighter, followed by Tekken. Mortal Kombat is the king of disappointing people. Numbers are high for both Street Fighter and Tekken, and both of those games function better online, with Street Fighter being the clear winner. The constantly leaning on the Asian market and Asian countries is just a wild assumption at this point. There's no evidence to support that they'd buy Mortal Kombat, there's no evidence to support that they would support the franchise, and I will acknowledge that Mines is also an assumption, but it's an assumption based off of the kind of fighting games they play and how they look at Mortal Kombat even when they're in the States. I wish they would unban them in those countries because I'm willing to bet it would not shift the numbers significantly enough to change the conversation. So why is all of this happening to Mortal Kombat despite high sales? There's a number of reasons outside of the glitches, delayed releases, bad balance patches, lack of communication from developers, overpriced microtransactions, a predatory online store, poor online services, a weak offering for offline modes, and all around unrefined gameplay. One of the reasons is legacy. Whilst Mortal Kombat is a legendary franchise and has iconic moves like Scorpion's Spear and Sub-Zero's Ice Clone, it doesn't have any real legacy in its core gameplay. Every game they tear away almost everything and start fresh, and a lot of the time that means that people don't come back or stick around. Now, due to the popularity in the sales, people are certainly buying Mortal Kombat because it looks cool and cinematic and you can rip people to shreds, and it basically is the ultimate form of disrespect if you want to dunk on your friends. But when the gimmick wears off, what's really left? It is an empty shell of a video game masquerading as a competent and coherent fighting game, and it's riding the wave of success its predecessors paved for it. When a new Mortal Kombat game comes out that recaptures the magic it once had, people will look back on Mortal Kombat 1 and they will no longer have rose-tinted glasses on, and they will see it for the failure that it was. But I also understand why there are so many people that want to make excuses for it. It's Mortal Kombat. Even saying that name out loud, you want to get excited. When they used to shout Mortal Kombat and that iconic music hit, everyone got hyped, and it didn't even matter if you played the game. Everybody was jumping around, enjoying themselves, everybody was embracing the game, but now it's just not like that. It is devoid of personality. It's not even fun to turn on. You know when you turn on a fighting game and the opening hits and it's all dramatic and cinematic? Mortal Kombat doesn't have that. You turn it on, it's this quiet, bleak tone. There's nothing going for it. It almost seems like a completely different franchise. I get wanting to be positive, but being positive and optimistic about this game does not serve any of you. NRS is not going to come shake your hands, they won't pay your bills, and they won't magically start caring about the pro scene overnight. They destroyed what the game is, and it's reflected in its numbers and in the tournaments. It's reflected in the numbers on Steam, it's reflected in the amount of people that are turning the game on or tuning in to watch it. Yes, it sold well, but so have most Call of Duty games, and we can all agree that those games, the Call of Duty games, are a shell of their former selves. MK as a franchise has such enormous weight and global appeal that it may very well continue to sell sell well despite them putting shit out. But that doesn't mean the product is good or close to what it used to be, and I think we all know that deep down. Now I'm going to tune in to Mortal Kombat EVO to see how it's going, but I'm anticipating a top 8 of Johnny Cages and Chameleons. And if it does come to that, I promise you guys in the MK community, I'm going to pour one out for you, because that's going to be a tough watch. It's always going to be my hope that Mortal Kombat improves and gets better, but with the current team and whoever's making the big decisions over there, I don't know if it's Ed Boon or other people that are pulling the strings now, I don't think things are going to change. I think the game will continue to sell well, but retain poorly, and I think tournament numbers will continue to dwindle off, and we may even be looking at a future where Mortal Kombat is no longer at EVO as a main game. Anyways guys, let me know what you guys will think of this in the comment section below, and I'll catch you very soon. Take care and peace.